Welcome to Crossdressing Stories. Here, we share personal stories, celebrate self-expression. If you're on your own journey or simply curious, you've found your community. Subscribe and join the conversation.
When my face became hers. It started with a photograph. That's how the most life-altering, identity-shattering moments begin. Isn't it? Not with a bang, but with a quiet email notification. A summons that feels mundane until it isn't. "Ethan, my manager, David," said, his voice flat over the phone. "Can you come up to HR? Brenda wants to see us." My stomach did a slow, cold flip. I was an IT specialist. For me, a summons to human resources on the 14th floor usually meant one of two things. Either someone had lodged a complaint about a system I managed, or I was about to be walked out of the building with my belongings in a cardboard box. At 24, with a quiet life, a small apartment, and a cat named Pixel, the second option was terrifying. I smoothed down my polo shirt, ran a hand through my unremarkable brown hair, and made the trek to the elevator. My life was built on routine, on the predictable logic of code and servers. I was the guy who fixed your email connection, the quiet presence in the server room, the one you barely noticed until your computer started making a funny noise. I liked it that way. Anonymity was a comfortable, well-worn sweater. Brenda's office was all glass and minimalist furniture, designed to look open and inviting, but feeling more like an interrogation room. She was a woman whose smile never quite reached her eyes. She gestured for me to sit. David was already there, looking profoundly uncomfortable, his gaze fixed on a spot just over my left shoulder. "Ethan," Brenda began, her voice a carefully modulated instrument of corporate diplomacy. "We need to discuss a sensitive matter that has been brought to our attention." She slid a single sheet of paper across the polished surface of her desk. It was a printout of a photo, the quality a little grainy, like it had been forwarded a few too many times. My brain registered the image in pieces. A woman, a dimly lit bar, maybe a striking red dress, the kind that clings to every curve, long, dark hair falling over one shoulder, and a face that made the air freeze in my lungs. She had my eyes, she had my nose. She had the exact shape of my mouth, though hers was painted in a soft, glossy pink. The line of her jaw was a little softer, her cheekbones a little higher, but the underlying structure, the very essence of the face, was mine. It was like looking at a version of myself from a parallel universe, a universe where I had been born a woman, a said beautiful woman, judging by the melancholy in her gaze. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice coming out as a croak. Brenda's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "That's the question. Ethan. This image has been circulating among some of the staff. The resemblance is uncanny." David finally spoke, his voice low. "It's more than a resemblance. Brenda, it's him." I stared at him, bewildered. "What? That's not me. I've never worn a dress in my life. I don't own a wig." "Look at her." I pointed a trembling finger at the photo. She's a woman." "We're aware of what the photo depicts," Brenda said, her tone laced with ice. "But in the current corporate climate, we have to take these things seriously. This kind of activity, if it is indeed you, reflects on the company." My mind was reeling. Activity. What activity? It's a person in a dress, and it's not me. Someone must have photoshopped this. It's a prank, a really sick prank. But even as I said it, a sliver of doubt wedged itself into my brain. The photo didn't look fake. The lighting was consistent. The way the shadows fell across her, my face seemed real. The girl in the picture was slender, her frame delicate. I was thin, always had been. It wouldn't be a stretch. "That's not me," I repeated, more forcefully this time, trying to convince myself as much as them. Brenda leaned back, folding her hands on her desk. The verdict was already in her eyes. "Ethan, we value you as an employee, but we can't have this kind of distraction. We're placing you on paid administrative leave, effective immediately. Pending an investigation. Paid leave. The corporate version of a death sentence. An investigation into what I demanded, my voice rising with panic. Into a picture of someone who looks like me. Into your conduct, she said simply. The walk back to my desk was a blur. The usual office chatter seemed to fade into a low hum. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on my back. Could almost hear the whispers. I grabbed my keys and wallet, left my laptop, and walked out of the building I had spent the last 3 years in. Feeling like a stranger. On the train ride home, I pulled out my phone and stared at my reflection in the dark screen. The same face from the photo stared back. Only harder, more angular, shadowed with a day's worth of stubble. Was it possible? Could I have a twin I never knew about? A doppelganger? Or was there a part of my life that I just couldn't remember? The thought was absurd, but the seed of doubt planted in that sterile office was already starting to sprout, its roots twisting around my certainty, my sense of self. I got home, fed, pixel, and sat on my couch in a daze. My career, my reputation, my simple, logical life. All of it was unraveling because of a picture of a girl in a red dress. A girl with my face. The phone rang 2 hours later. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but a strange compulsion made me swipe the screen. "Is this Ethan Ward?" a woman's voice asked. It was crisp, professional, and held an undercurrent of authority that was impossible to ignore. "Who is this?" I asked, my own voice still hoarse. "My name is Lena Cross," she said. "I'm the reason you were sent home today. I believe we have a great deal to talk about. It concerns the girl in the photograph." My heart hammered against my ribs. "You sent them that picture?" "Indirectly," she replied, a hint of impatience in her tone. It was a necessary catalyst. "Mr. Ward, the girl in the picture is named Ellie, and I need you to become her." I must have been silent for a full 10 seconds, my brain trying and failing to process the words. It felt like a line from a bizarre spy movie. "I don't know what you're talking about." I finally managed. "This is a mistake. I'm not this Ellie person." "I know you aren't," Lena said calmly. "Ellie doesn't exist. Not really. She's a digital ghost, a carefully constructed identity we've been building for months. The problem is, we now need to give that ghost a body. Your body. To be precise, your face." I sank deeper into my couch cushions, the absurdity of the situation threatening to overwhelm me. "You're insane. You got me fired for a ghost." "Suspended," she corrected, and it was the only way to get your undivided attention without raising suspicion. "I'm a consultant for a specialized government task force. We're running an undercover investigation into a data brokerage ring. They deal in stolen corporate and personal information on a massive scale. We've spent a year building a legend for an insider, an analyst who goes by the name Ellie. She's our way in. We fabricated her work history, her social media, everything. We even used advanced facial blending software to create her image, using a composite of anonymous features. The result was you, with a few modifications. It was all too much. So you're telling me your super-secret government software randomly generated my face? The algorithm found your driver's license photo in a public records database and identified your facial structure as a near-perfect match for the composite. An anomaly. But a useful one. The photo of Ellie in the red dress was a deepfake we created and seeded into your company's network. We needed to isolate you, to make you available. I stood up and started pacing my small living room. This was a nightmare. "No, absolutely not. You've ruined my career for some crazy scheme. I'm not going to pretend to be a woman for you. Find someone else." "We can't." Lena's voice was firm, unyielding. "There's no time. Our window to insert Ellie into the operation is closing. And there's another factor you need to consider." There was a soft ping as a text message arrived on my phone. Look at the image I just sent you. With a sense of dread, I opened it. It wasn't a photograph this time. It was a digital sketch. A character profile. The kind you might see in a video game or a police file. It was labeled Ellie. The face was rendered in stunning detail. And it was, without a single doubt, my face. Every contour, every line, every subtle feature was there, only softened, feminized, and framed by long, dark hair. It wasn't just a resemblance anymore. It was a mirror. The sketch was more me than the deepfake photo had been. This is from their internal files, Lena explained, her voice a low hum in my ear. This is how they see Ellie. They're expecting her. They're expecting you. If she doesn't show up, they'll get suspicious. If we send someone else who doesn't match the face, the operation is blown. I stared at the sketch, a cold, heavy feeling settling in my gut. It felt like a trap, not a trap set by Lena, but by fate itself. What were the odds that my face, my boring, average face, would be the one key that fit this impossible lock? I can't do this, I whispered, the words feeling thin and useless. You can, Lena countered, and we'll make it worth your while. Your job will be reinstated with a promotion and a bonus that will clear all your debts. We will expunge this entire incident from your record. You'll walk away clean, with your life significantly improved. Or, you can refuse, and we walk away. You'll be left to explain an embarrassing, viral photo to your employer, who already thinks the worst of you. The choice is yours, Ethan. But look at that face. This was always going to be you. I looked at the sketch again. The girl Ellie stared back, her eyes holding a familiar loneliness. She looked like she was waiting for something. Waiting for me. My life was already in pieces. Maybe, just maybe, the only way to put it back together was to let it shatter completely. Where do I go? I asked, the words tasting like surrender. A few days later, I was in a place that felt like it existed outside of time. It was a sterile, windowless preparation room in a secure, undisclosed location. The walls were a soft, clinical white, and the lighting was diffuse, casting no shadows. It was a blank canvas. I was the canvas. Two women were waiting for me. They were the artists. Ethan, this is Maren and Harper, Lena said, her voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. Maren is our stylist. Harper is a theatrical makeup artist. For the next few weeks, they are going to be your guides. They will turn you into Ellie. Maren was tall and sharp, with an asymmetrical haircut and an air of no-nonsense efficiency. Harper was softer, her movements fluid and gentle, her eyes kind and analytical. They looked at me not like a man, but like a project, a block of marble to be sculpted. All right, Ethan, Maren said, clapping her hands together once. Let's get started. First things first, we need to get rid of all this. She made a sweeping gesture that encompassed every hair on my body. The process began there, with the systematic shaving away of the person I had known for 24 years. They led me to a small private adjoining room with a walk-in shower. Harper handed me a high-end electric razor and a canister of hypoallergenic shaving cream. Everything, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Arms, legs, chest, everything. We need a perfectly smooth surface to work with. Take your time. The buzz of the razor felt loud in the silent room. I started with my arms, the unfamiliar sensation of the cool metal guard against my skin, followed by the sight of my own hair falling away, was deeply unsettling. My arms, which had always been my arms, suddenly looked alien, paler, more vulnerable. Then came my legs. I'd never paid much attention to them before. They were just legs. But as I worked my way up from my ankles, shaving away the dark hair, the shape of them changed. The subtle curve of my calf muscle, the line of my shin. It was all more defined, more exposed. The skin felt shockingly smooth, cool to the touch. A shiver, not entirely from the cold, ran up my spine. It was a strange, unnerving feeling of newness. The most difficult part was my face. I had shaved my face thousands of times, a mundane morning ritual. But this was different. This wasn't about trimming stubble. It was about erasing a fundamental part of my male identity. Harper had me use a special multi-bladed razor and a cream that smelled faintly of lavender. The blade glided over my skin, leaving it smoother than it had ever been. I looked in the mirror. My face raw and pinkish. The last vestiges of masculine shadow were gone. After the shaving came the skin treatments. Harper applied a gentle exfoliating scrub all over my body. The tiny beads felt strange against my newly bare skin. A tingling, slightly abrasive sensation. It felt like she was literally scrubbing away my old self, layer by layer. She followed it with a thick, creamy moisturizer that left my skin feeling impossibly soft, almost slick. I ran a hand over my arm, and the lack of any friction was bizarre. It didn't feel like my own skin anymore. Next, I sat in a brightly lit chair while Harper focused on my eyebrows. This was a detail I never would have considered. "Your brows are too heavy, too straight," she explained, her voice a low murmur. "We need to create a more delicate arch. It will open up your eyes and soften your entire expression." She carefully plucked and trimmed, her touch light and precise. I could feel each tiny sting as a hair was pulled from its root. With each one, I felt like a piece of my familiar reflection was being stolen. She held up a small mirror when she was done. The change was subtle but profound. My eyes looked larger, more expressive. The hard line of my brow was gone, replaced by a gentle, feminine curve. The face in the mirror was a stranger who was starting to look more and more like the sketch of Ellie. Not yet her, but no longer fully me, a blank space between two identities. The next day was dedicated to makeup. I sat in the same chair, facing a large mirror bordered with bright, shadowless lights. Harper's station was a dazzling array of brushes, palettes, and bottles. "Makeup isn't about hiding," she told me, her eyes meeting mine in the reflection. "It's about shaping. We're going to use light and shadow to create the illusion of a more feminine bone structure." She started with a primer, a cool, silky gel that smoothed over my skin. Then came the foundation. It felt like a cool, liquid mask being painted onto my face, hiding the slight redness from the previous day's shave. "Now for the magic," she murmured, picking up a contouring palette. With deft strokes of a brush, she applied a darker shade just below my cheekbones, along my jawline, and on the sides of my nose. The sensation was ticklish, almost weightless. Then, she used a lighter, shimmering powder on the tops of my cheeks, the bridge of my nose, and just below my newly shaped eyebrows. She blended it all seamlessly. And as I watched, my face began to transform in the mirror. My jaw appeared softer, less square. My nose looked narrower and more refined. My cheekbones seemed to rise, giving my face a delicate, heart-shaped quality. It was an optical illusion, a trick of the light, but it was powerfully effective. The most jarring part was the eyes. She applied a subtle, neutral eyeshadow, then a thin, precise line of dark brown eyeliner just above my upper lashes. It made my eyes look wider, more defined. Then came the false eyelashes. They were light, individual lashes, not a thick, heavy strip. She applied them one by one with a pair of tweezers. The feeling of her working so close to my eyeball was unnerving, a constant tickle that made me want to blink. "Try to relax," she soothed. "Almost done." When I opened my eyes again, the transformation was shocking. My own eyes stared back at me, but they were different. Softer, deeper. They were Ellie's eyes. Finally, she painted my lips with a soft, nude pink lipstick. It felt waxy and slightly heavy, a constant, foreign presence. I pressed my lips together tentatively, and the slick sensation was another reminder that this face was no longer entirely my own. I stared at the reflection, my heart a confused drum against my ribs. The man who had walked into this room was gone. In his place was a stranger with a soft, pretty face. It was a mask. Yes, but it was a mask made from my own features. The feeling wasn't just discomfort, it was a strange, unsettling allure. The person in the mirror was beautiful, and that person was, in a way, me. The final stage of the initial transformation was the clothing. Maren came forward, holding a wig in her hands. It was made of real human hair, a rich, dark brown, just like in the sketch. "This will feel strange at first," she said. "We need to secure it tightly." She pulled a stocking-like cap over my own short hair, tucking everything in neatly. Then she carefully placed the wig on my head, adjusting it until it sat perfectly along my hairline. The weight of it was immediate, a warm, heavy presence. The long strands of hair fell around my shoulders and brushed against my cheeks. It felt like wearing a soft, constricting helmet. I instinctively tried to push a strand of hair out of my face, and the gesture felt so alien, so rehearsed. Maren stepped back, her eyes scanning my form. "Okay, time to get dressed." The first outfit she laid out was simple, yet terrifying. A soft, cream-colored blouse with a square neckline that would expose my collarbones, a flowing, navy blue midi skirt, and a pair of sheer nude stockings. "The undergarments are just as important," Maren explained, handing me a set of padded shapewear designed to create the illusion of softer hips and a more rounded backside. It was tight and constricting, another layer of artificial femininity. The most difficult part was the stockings. The fabric was impossibly thin, like smoke. I fumbled with them, terrified of tearing the delicate material. As I pulled them up, the cool, slick fabric slid against my freshly shaven legs. The sensation was electric, a strange combination of constricting and sensual. It was the most profoundly foreign feeling I had ever experienced. My legs didn't feel like my own. They felt like a part of the costume, a part of Ellie. Finally, the heels. They weren't stilettos, just a simple pair of black pumps with a 2-inch heel, but when I tried to stand, my ankles wobbled, and I immediately pitched forward. Maren caught my arm, her grip firm. "Easy," she said, a small, knowing smile on her face. "It takes practice. Think of it as learning to walk all over again. Shift your weight to the balls of your feet, smaller steps." She held my hands and walked with me, like a parent teaching a toddler. The hard click of the heels on the floor sounded sharp and loud, an announcement of my presence. Each step was a precarious balancing act. My whole body felt off-kilter, my posture forced into an unnatural arch. They positioned me in front of a full-length mirror, and there she was, Ellie. The wig framed the face Harper had created. The blouse and skirt created a silhouette that was believably female. The stockings gave my legs a smooth, flawless finish. The heels forced me to stand in a way that pushed my hips out slightly. It was a complete head-to-toe illusion. I lifted a hand, and the girl in the mirror lifted hers. But it didn't feel like my reflection. It felt like I was looking through a window at another person. Maren came to stand beside me, her reflection appearing next to the strange girl. She put a hand on my shoulder. "It's okay, Ellie," she said softly. "Just take a breath. From now on, this is who you are." The sound of that name Ellie directed at the person in the mirror, at me, sent a jolt through my entire body. My chest tightened. It wasn't a request. It was an instruction. I wasn't playing a role. I was becoming it. And as I stared at the sad, beautiful girl in the mirror, a terrifying thought surfaced. What if I was a better Ellie than I had ever been in Ethan? The physical transformation was only the beginning. Being Ellie wasn't just about looking the part. It was about sounding it, moving it, being it. Lena's instructions were clear. The immersion had to be total. My next trial was voice training. Lena introduced me to a dialect coach named Robert, a man with a calm demeanor and an incredibly perceptive ear. We spent hours in a small soundproofed room. A woman's voice isn't just about pitch. Robert explained on our first day. It's about resonance, inflection, and breath. Men typically speak from their chest. We need to move your voice up, into your head, He had me place a hand on my chest and speak in my normal voice. I could feel the deep rumble of vibration. "Now," he said, "try to hum. And as you do, focus on feeling the vibration behind your nose and in your forehead." It was harder than it sounded. My voice kept dropping back into its old familiar register. The muscles in my throat felt tight and strained. He taught me breathing exercises, showing me how to take shallower, quieter breaths, which would prevent my voice from booming. "Think light," he kept saying. Everything about Ellie's voice should feel light. We worked on shaping my mouth differently. "Soften your consonants." He'd instruct. "Don't punch the T's and D's. Let them be gentle. And lift the corners of your mouth slightly when you speak. It will naturally raise the pitch." Hour after hour, I practiced. "Hello, my name is Ellie. It's a pleasure to meet you. Could I please have a coffee?" The words felt ridiculous coming out of my mouth. My throat grew sore and raw. At the end of the first day, I could barely speak above a whisper. But slowly, painstakingly, something began to shift. By the third day, a new voice started to emerge. It was softer, higher, with a slight breathiness to it. It wasn't my voice. It was a strange, melodic sound that seemed to come from someone else. Harper was there for one of the sessions. I was practicing my lines when she walked in. I turned to her and, without thinking, said, "Hi, Harper. How are you today?" in Ellie's voice. She stopped and smiled, a genuine surprised smile. "There she is," she said, clapping softly. "That's Ellie." Hearing that validation, seeing her reaction, sent a weird thrill through me. It was the first time the illusion had felt truly real to someone else. It was also the first time I felt a flicker of pride in my performance, which was a deeply confusing emotion. The next step was the first public test. Lena's plan was simple, but terrifying. I was to go to a moderately busy coffee shop downtown, a place the real targets of the investigation had been known to frequent. My task was to go in, order a drink, sit at a table for 20 minutes, and then leave, all as Ellie. The goal was to see if I could exist in the world as her without anyone looking twice. Getting ready that morning felt different. It wasn't just Harper and Maren doing things to me. I had to participate. I showered and shaved meticulously, the actions already feeling less alien. I sat patiently as Harper applied the makeup, but this time I paid close attention, trying to memorize the steps. When Maren fitted the wig, I adjusted the strands myself, trying to make it look natural. I slipped into the stockings, the smooth fabric now familiar against my skin. The dress was a simple, conservative navy blue wrap dress. And then, the heels, they were still my enemy. "You can do this," Maren said, sensing my hesitation. "Walk with purpose, head up. Don't look at your feet. Ellie is confident." The ride to the coffee shop was silent. I sat in the back of a black town car, my hands clasped in my lap, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I could feel the soft fabric of the dress against my legs, the weight of the wig on my head, the slight stickiness of the lip gloss. Every nerve in my body was on high alert. The car pulled up a block away. "Go," Lena said from the front seat. "We'll be watching." Stepping out of the car and onto the sidewalk was like stepping onto a stage. The city sounds seemed amplified. The sun felt brighter. The click-clack of my heels on the pavement was a loud staccato announcement of my arrival. I forced myself to take slow, deliberate steps, just as Maren had taught me. The skirt swished gently around my knees with each step. A strand of hair from the wig blew across my face, and I reached up to tuck it behind my ear, the gesture feeling surprisingly natural. I focused on my breathing, keeping it light and even. Pushing open the glass door of the coffee shop felt like crossing a threshold into another world. The warm air inside smelled of coffee and baked goods. A few people glanced up as I entered, their eyes lingering for a second before flicking away. It was the kind of casual dismissive glance a person gives to any other stranger. No one stared, no one pointed, no one seemed to notice anything unusual. they just saw a woman. I walked to the counter, my legs trembling slightly. I recited my order in Ellie's voice, the words I had practiced 100 times. "I'll have a medium latte with oat milk, please." The young barista smiled at me. "Sure thing. Name for the order." "Ellie," I said, the name leaving my lips more easily than I expected. I paid, my movements feeling clumsy and oversized, and moved to wait at the end of the counter. I was acutely aware of everyone around me, a group of students laughing at a table, a businessman typing furiously on his laptop, and a man, about my age, sitting alone by the window. He looked up, and our eyes met for a brief moment. He gave me a small, polite smile. My heart did a strange little flutter. It wasn't attraction. It was something else. It was the shock of being seen. Truly seen. As a woman, he wasn't smiling at Ethan Ward in a dress. He was smiling at a girl named Ellie. The thought was both terrifying and intoxicating. When my name was called, I took my latte and found an empty table. Sitting down gracefully was a challenge. I had to remember to keep my knees together, to tuck my feet slightly to one side. I took a sip of my coffee, the warmth spreading through my chest, doing little to calm my nerves. For 20 minutes, I just sat there. I scrolled through my phone, pretending to read emails. I watched the people outside. I tried to just be. And the most incredible thing happened. Nothing. The world didn't stop. No alarms went off. I was just another person in a coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon. The man by the window stood up to leave. As he passed my table, he smiled again. A little more intentionally this time. "Have a good day," he said, his voice warm. "You too," I replied, Ellie's voice coming out soft and automatic. The interaction lasted 5 seconds, but it left my pulse racing. It was a mix of pure, paralyzing fear and a confusing, exhilarating thrill. Fear of being discovered, of the whole illusion shattering, and the thrill of it working, the thrill of being someone else, someone who could be smiled at by a handsome stranger in a coffee shop. What did that mean? I didn't know, and I was too afraid to examine the feeling too closely. When my 20 minutes were up, I stood, walked out of the coffee shop, and got back into the waiting car. The moment the door closed, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for the entire time. "Well done, Ellie," Lena said, not looking back from the front seat. "Phase 1 is complete." I leaned my head back against the leather seat and closed my eyes. I had done it. I had walked in the world as Ellie, and the world had accepted it. But as the adrenaline began to fade, a new, more unsettling feeling took its place. For those 20 minutes, Ethan had completely disappeared, and a small, treacherous part of me hadn't missed him at all. The days that followed blurred into a relentless boot camp of femininity. Lena's mandate of total immersion was not an exaggeration. I was to live as Ellie from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to bed. Ethan was to be locked away. My mornings began not with a quick shower and a cup of coffee, but with a 90-minute ritual. The meticulous, full-body shave was now a daily requirement. Then came the makeup. Harper supervised me for the first few days, guiding my unsteady hands as I learned to apply foundation, contour my own jawline, and fix the delicate false lashes to my eyelids. It was like learning to paint on a canvas that was also me. My hands would shake as I tried to draw a straight line with the eyeliner. More than once, I had to wash everything off and start over. But gradually, my movements became more confident. I learned the right amount of pressure for each brush, the way to blend the shadows to create depth. Then came the hair. Maren taught me how to care for the expensive human hair wig, how to wash and style it. She showed me 3 different basic hairstyles: a simple, professional ponytail, a soft bun for a more casual look, and wearing it down and straight for more formal occasions. Learning to handle the long hair was a challenge in itself. It got caught in things, it tickled my face, and I was constantly, unconsciously trying to tuck it behind my ears. The wardrobe was an education. Mara had assembled a full closet for Ellie. It was filled with soft fabrics, elegant blouses, tailored trousers, and an array of skirts and dresses. There was nothing overtly sexy or flashy. Ellie's style was professional, understated, and feminine. Every morning, Maren would select an outfit, explaining why each piece worked. This A-line skirt helps create a more feminine silhouette by adding width at the hips, she'd say. Or, a V-neck blouse elongates the neck and draws attention to the collarbone. It was a language I had never known existed. But the hardest part was the constant physical awareness. As a man, I had moved through the world with a certain unconscious ease. Now, every movement had to be deliberate. Mara put me through drills. How to sit never with legs spread, always crossed at the ankle or the knee. How to walk not just in heels, but with a lighter step, a slight sway in the hips that didn't look forced. How to stand with weight on one leg, one hip cocked slightly, even how to handle objects. Don't grab the coffee mug like you're holding a beer, she'd chide. Use a more delicate grip. Let your pinky finger lift slightly. I spent hours practicing in front of a mirror. I watched videos of women walking, talking, laughing. I was learning to perform a role, but it was a role that was slowly seeping into my muscle memory. The heels that had once felt like instruments of torture became manageable, then almost comfortable. The stockings, once a source of constant, weird sensation, now just felt like a normal part of getting dressed. Lena even insisted I adjust my emotional responses. Men tend to react with anger or stoicism. She said during one of our briefings, Ellie needs to be softer, express vulnerability, show empathy. When you're startled, your reaction should be a gasp, not a curse. When you're pleased, it should be a bright, genuine smile. I felt like an actor in the most demanding role of my life. The strangest part was how my body started to adapt. After a week of living as Ellie, I would wake up in the morning, and for a fleeting second, before I was fully conscious, I would feel smaller, softer. The memory of Ellie's physicality was overwriting my own. One evening, after a long day of training, I went back to my assigned apartment in the secure facility. I completed the nightly ritual of removal: the dress, the heels, the constricting shapewear. I peeled off the stockings. I carefully removed the wig, placing it on its stand, and the sudden feeling of lightness on my head was jarring. I scrubbed the makeup from my face, watching as Ellie's features dissolved under the washcloth, revealing the pale, tired face of Ethan underneath. I looked in the mirror. My short hair was matted down. My eyebrows were still perfectly arched. My skin was ridiculously smooth. I looked like a bizarre hybrid. Neither Ethan nor Ellie, and a profound sense of emptiness washed over me. The wig, which I had hated, now felt like a missing part of me. Its absence felt like a loss. I ran a hand through my short, prickly hair, and it felt wrong. I had a sudden, shocking realization I felt more incomplete as Ethan than I did as Ellie. The thought terrified me. Ellie was supposed to be a mask, a character I played, but the lines were blurring. The performance was starting to feel more natural than my own reality. Ellie wasn't just a role anymore. She was an experience, a set of feelings and sensations, and she was creeping into the very core of who I was. A few days later, Lena scheduled another field test. This time, the objective was more complex. I had to go to a quiet, upscale bar, the kind of place where backroom data deals might actually happen. I was to meet a low-level contact, another undercover agent, exchange a few pleasantries, and leave. It was a dry run for the real mission. For this test, Marin chose a sleek black cocktail dress that ended just at the knee and a pair of slightly higher heels. Harper gave me a smokier, more dramatic eye makeup look and a bolder, deep red lipstick. When I saw myself in the mirror, I was stunned. This wasn't the professional, quiet Ellie from the coffee shop. This Ellie was confident, alluring, and a little mysterious. As I was about to leave, I felt a surge of nerves. It was one thing to be anonymous in a busy coffee shop. It was another to be on display in a dimly lit bar. "You'll be fine," Harper said, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "You look beautiful." The compliment landed strangely. It wasn't for me, Ethan, it was for Ellie, but her cheeks flushed all the same. The bar was quiet and classy, with dark wood and soft jazz playing in the background. I took a seat at the bar, ordered a glass of wine, and waited. As I sat there, trying to look nonchalant, I felt a presence slide into the seat next to me. I glanced over, expecting to see my contact. It wasn't him. It was the man from the coffee shop. My blood ran cold. Had he followed me? Was I compromised? He smiled, and it was a warm, genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I know this is going to sound crazy," he said, his voice a low, pleasant baritone. "But you're the woman from the coffee shop the other day." "Right? The one with the latte." I could only nod. My throat suddenly dry. My mind raced. What was I supposed to do? Lena's training hadn't prepared me for this. "I'm Callum, by the way," he said, extending a hand. "Callum Hayes." I hesitated for a second before placing my hand in his. His grip was warm and firm. "Ellie," I said, my voice coming out breathier than I intended. "Ellie," he repeated, as if tasting the name. "It's a lovely name. I hope you don't think I'm a creep for remembering you. You have a very memorable face." My face, the carefully constructed mask. He was complimenting Harper's artistry, Lena's grand design. But the way he looked at me, his eyes focused on my lips, it felt incredibly real. "Thank you," I managed to say. We fell into easy conversation. He asked what I did, and I recited the cover story Lena had drilled into me, a freelance data analyst. He told me he was an architect. He was charming, funny, and disarmingly normal. Throughout our conversation, I was hyper-aware of myself. I kept my posture straight. I remembered to smile softly, to laugh with a light, airy sound instead of my usual bark. I was performing the role of my life. At one point, I gestured while telling a story, and my hand brushed against his on the bar. A jolt, like a tiny static shock, passed between us. He didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his hand over and lightly covered mine for a fleeting second. "Sorry," he said, though he didn't look sorry at all. His gaze was intense, and it was making me blush, a real, honest-to-God blush that had nothing to do with makeup. I knew I should end the conversation. My contact was probably waiting, watching this whole exchange. This was a complication, a dangerous one. This was Ethan's logical brain screaming at me. But Ellie was flattered. She was enjoying the attention. She was curious to see what it felt like, to be flirted with, to be desired as a woman. And for a few dangerous minutes, I let Ellie win. I let myself enjoy the warmth in his eyes, the way he leaned in when I spoke, the simple, intoxicating feeling of being seen as beautiful. Finally, I saw my real contact enter the bar and give a subtle nod from across the room. The spell was broken. "I have to go," I said, pulling my hand away. "I'm meeting someone." "Of course," Callum said, his smile not fading. "Can I?" "Would it be too forward to ask for your number?" "I'd love to take you to dinner sometime." "Ellie." Panic and temptation warred within me. The answer had to be no. It was the only sane, safe answer. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to sound genuinely regretful. I'm not really in a position to be dating right now. It was lovely to meet you." "Callum." I slid off the bar stool, my movements hopefully more graceful than they felt, and walked away. Not daring to look back, I met my contact, exchanged the coded pleasantries, and left the bar, my heart hammering a chaotic rhythm. Back in the car, I was silent. I had successfully completed the mission, but I had also failed spectacularly. I had let a stranger get too close. I had indulged in a dangerous fantasy. Lena, as expected, was not pleased. "You were reckless," she said, her voice cold. An unknown variable like that could compromise everything. "I know," I whispered, "I'm sorry." But as I sat there, replaying the encounter in my mind, the warmth of his hand, the sincerity in his eyes, I knew my apology was a lie. I wasn't sorry it had happened. I was terrified. Yes, but I wasn't sorry, because for a few brief, shining moments in that bar, I hadn't been Ethan Ward pretending. I had simply been Ellie, and she had felt alive. That night marked the true turning point, the wall between Ethan and Ellie, the one I had tried so desperately to maintain, began to crumble into dust. The conflict moved from an external struggle, learning to walk, to talk, to exist as her, to a brutal internal war. It came to a head one night, a week after the encounter with Callum. I had just finished another long day of training, this time focusing on micro-expressions and body language for the upcoming mission. I was exhausted, mentally and physically. I went through the motions of my nightly de-Ellification process. The clothes came off, then the wig, then the makeup. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, stripped down to a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, my face scrubbed clean. I was supposed to be looking at Ethan Ward, but I wasn't. The person in the mirror was a ghost, a pale imitation of the man I used to be. My skin was too soft. My eyebrows were too perfect. The absence of hair on my arms and chest made my frame look slighter, more delicate. The last traces of my masculine identity had been so thoroughly sanded down that what was left felt hollow. And then, my eyes landed on the closet where Ellie's clothes were kept. An impulse, sharp and undeniable, seized me. I walked over and opened the door. The scent of her perfume, a light floral scent that I now associated with my own skin, wafted out. I reached in, and my fingers brushed against the silky fabric of a simple, emerald green wrap dress. It was one of her favorites. Before I could think, before the logical part of my brain could scream in protest, I was taking it off the hanger. I slipped it on. The cool, smooth fabric slid over my skin. A feeling that was now as familiar as cotton or denim used to be. It settled around my body, the wrap design accentuating a waist I didn't naturally have, but that the shapewear had trained my posture to create. I turned back to the mirror. An androgynous figure in a beautiful dress. Stared back. It was incomplete. My hands moved on their own accord. I went to the vanity and picked up the wig, settling the weight of it onto my head. The long, dark hair fell around my shoulders, and the transformation was instantaneous. The ghost in the mirror vanished. A person began to emerge. I sat down and, with hands that now moved with practiced ease, I began to apply the makeup. Not the full, mission-ready mask, but a softer version. A little foundation to even out my skin tone, a touch of mascara to make my eyes seem wider, a hint of nude gloss on my lips. When I was done, I stood up and faced my reflection. It was Ellie. She stood there in the green dress, her dark hair framing a face with soft cheekbones and large, expressive eyes. Her lips were full and pink. Her body, in the soft lighting, looked slender and graceful, and as I stared into her eyes, a profound and terrifying sense of vertigo washed over me. I felt a strange, dual sensation. I was the observer, and I was the observed. Ethan, the man, was looking at this beautiful woman in the mirror, and he was captivated. He was enchanted by her. But I was also her. I was the one inside that body, feeling the soft fabric against my skin, the weight of the hair on my shoulders. I lifted a hand and touched my cheek. The skin was soft, the makeup smooth. It felt like I was touching someone else's face, a face I was starting to know better than my own, a face I was starting to prefer. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I wasn't just playing a role anymore. I wasn't just attracted to the idea of being Ellie, or the thrill of the deception. I was falling in love with the person in the mirror, with her beauty, her grace, her perceived softness. She was everything that I, Ethan, was not. And I was starting to hate Ethan for it. He was clumsy, plain, and invisible. Ellie was radiant. A single, whispered question escaped my lips, fogging the glass. Who am I? There was no answer, just the silent, beautiful stranger in the mirror, wearing my face. The line had not just been blurred, it had been erased. I no longer knew where Ethan ended and Ellie began. Was I a man dreaming he was a woman? Or was I a woman who had been trapped in the body and life of a man for 24 years? The thought was so overwhelming, so world-altering, that my knees felt weak. I leaned against the counter, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I looked from my smooth manicured hands to my reflection. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but underneath it, a new emotion was bubbling up. It was a dark, thrilling sense of discovery. I was no longer repulsed by the image of Ellie. I wasn't even just accepting it. I was starting to desire it. I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was the real me. And that was the most terrifying and exhilarating thought I had ever had. The mission was finally a go. The data brokerage ring was planning a major transaction at a private, high-stakes poker game. It was the perfect opportunity for Ellie, the freelance analyst with a supposed gambling problem and valuable intel to sell, to make her move. Getting ready that night was different from all the practice runs. This was real. The stakes were life and death, not just a blown operation. Harper's hands were steady as she applied the final touches of makeup, a slightly more glamorous look for an evening event. Maran dressed me in a stunning, deep blue satin dress that clung to my frame, the fabric feeling like cool water against my skin. The heels were higher, the jewelry real. As I looked at myself in the full-length mirror, I wasn't just seeing Ellie. I felt like her. The fear was there, but it was a nervous, excited energy, not the crippling anxiety of before. I felt powerful. I felt beautiful. Lena gave me a final briefing in the car. Your target is a man named Marcus Thorne. He's the one who runs the game and vets the players. You need to get his attention. Convince him you have something worth buying, and plant the listening device somewhere in his private office. She handed me a tiny, almost invisible audio bug disguised as a cufflink, except I wasn't wearing cuffs. Where do I put this? I asked. It's magnetic. She said, your earring has a counterpart. Get close to him, pretend to fix your hair, or whisper something, and press the earring to a metal surface, a lamp, a desk leg, anything. The plan was risky, but I nodded. My heart was a frantic bird in my chest. The poker game was held in the penthouse suite of a luxury hotel. The air was thick with cigar smoke, the scent of expensive whiskey, and a palpable tension. The men at the table were powerful, their faces hard and unreadable. I was the only woman in the room who wasn't serving drinks. I walked in, and the low hum of conversation faltered. All eyes turned to me. For a moment, I froze. This was it. The ultimate test. Then I remembered Maran's words, walk with purpose. I lifted my chin, gave a small, confident smile to the room at large, and walked towards the bar. I could feel their gazes on my back, appraising, curious. I had barely ordered a drink when a man approached me. He was older, with silver hair and eyes as cold as a winter sky. Marcus Thorne. You're not one of my usual players, he said, his voice a low growl. I turned, giving him the soft, slightly nervous smile Lena had coached me to use. I was told this is where people come to take calculated risks. I said, my voice, Ellie's voice, steady and smooth. My name is Ellie. He looked me up and down, his gaze lingering on the curve of my hip, where the blue satin was tightest. Ellie, and what kind of risks do you like to take? The profitable kind, I replied, letting a hint of steel enter my tone. His interest was piqued. We spent the next hour in a careful dance of words. I fed him pieces of the fabricated intel Lena had supplied. enough to convince him I was a valuable asset. He seemed to be buying it. But there was a flicker of something in his eyes I couldn't place. Suspicion, or just professional paranoia. He eventually led me to his private office, away from the noise of the game, to discuss the details. This was my chance. The office was opulent, with a large mahogany desk and a view of the city lights. As he was looking over the sample data files on his computer, I saw it, a heavy brass lamp on the corner of his desk. My heart hammered. This was the moment. I walked closer, pretending to look at the screen over his shoulder. "It all seems to be in order," I murmured, my voice low and intimate. I leaned in, as if to whisper a secret. My hair brushed against his cheek. I could smell his cologne. My hand went to my ear, my fingers fumbling with the earring. Suddenly, he turned, his hand shooting out and grabbing my wrist. His grip was like iron. "There's something different about you," he said, his eyes narrowing. The file I was given on Ellie, her description, it mentioned a small scar on her left shoulder blade, a childhood accident. His eyes flickered to my bare shoulder, exposed by the dress's cut. There was no scar. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. My carefully constructed world was about to implode. My mind went blank. All the training, all the lines Lena had fed me, evaporated. In that moment of sheer terror, I didn't react as Ethan would have, with a surge of adrenaline, a desire to fight back. I reacted as Ellie. My body, now trained for this, took over. My breath hitched in a small, frightened gasp. My eyes widened, filling with what I'm sure looked like genuine fear. My whole body went soft, vulnerable. I began to tremble, a subtle, uncontrollable shiver. I don't know what you're talking about," I whispered, my voice shaking. My free hand came up to my chest. A classic gesture of feminine distress. I was weaponizing the very femininity they had taught me. I was making myself look weak, scared, and harmless. It was a desperate, instinctive gamble. He stared at me, his grip still tight. The seconds stretched into an eternity. He was searching my face, my eyes, for any sign of deception. I just held his gaze, my expression a mask of pure, terrified innocence. Finally, with a low grunt, he let go. "Maybe my source was mistaken," he grumbled, turning back to the computer, nervous. "A little," I breathed, rubbing my wrist. "You startled me." He waved a dismissive hand. The danger had passed. But my adrenaline was screaming. I had to get out. I made my excuses, finalized the deal for the data drop, and walked out of that office on legs that felt like jelly. Back at the command center, Lena was waiting. She had been listening to the whole thing through a separate bug planted on my phone. "You almost blew it," she said, her face grim. "I know," I said, my body still shaking from the aftershock. "But your reaction," she continued, her expression shifting to one of grudging respect. "Your instinct to play the frightened woman, that's what saved you. You were completely convincing." She looked at me then, a long analytical look. It wasn't praise, it was an observation, a diagnosis. "You're getting too comfortable in this role, aren't you?" she asked, her voice quiet. "You're not just playing Ellie anymore. You're starting to believe it." I didn't answer. She took a step closer. "Let me ask you a question, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. After this is all over, when you have the money and your old life back, are you sure you still want to be Ethan?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. I opened my mouth to give the obvious answer, the sane answer. Yes. Of course I do. But the words wouldn't come. They felt like a lie. How could I go back to being the grey, invisible IT guy after I had been her, after I had known what it felt like to walk into a room and command attention, to be seen, to be beautiful, to survive on my wits and a well-timed, frightened gasp. My silence was all the answer she needed. She just nodded slowly, a flicker of something unreadable. Pity concern in her eyes. "I thought so," she said, and walked away, leaving me alone with the chilling echo of her question and the terrifying truth of my own silence. The mission was a success, but the fallout in my own head was catastrophic. The lines had been so blurred for so long that I couldn't find them anymore. My life became a strange purgatory. During the day, I was Ellie, maintaining communication with Thorne's network, feeding them carefully curated data. At night, I would go back to my apartment, remove the costume, and stare at the stranger in the mirror, feeling a profound sense of dislocation. Callum Hayes had not given up. He had somehow found Ellie's fabricated social media profile and sent a message. "Dinner my treat. I promise I'm not a stalker, just persistent." Lena had forbidden any contact. It was too risky. But I found myself looking at his message again and again. It was a lifeline to a world where Ellie could be a real person, a world I desperately wanted to believe in. One night, the temptation became too much. I was feeling particularly lost, adrift between my two selves. I put on a simple skirt and sweater, applied a light touch of makeup, and slipped out of the facility, telling the guards I was going for a walk. I went to a quiet park nearby and sent Callum a message. "I'm at the fountain in Northwood Park, if you're free." It was an insane, reckless thing to do, but I needed to see him. I needed to know if the feeling of being Ellie with him was real. He arrived 20 minutes later, a little out of breath, a wide smile on his face. "I can't believe you actually came," he said. We walked through the park, the cool night air a balm on my frayed nerves. The conversation was easy, comfortable. He didn't ask about my work or my past. We talked about movies, about travel, about stupid, everyday things, for an hour. I wasn't an undercover agent. I was just a girl on a pseudo-date with a handsome architect. We sat on a bench overlooking a small pond. The moonlight shimmered on the water. "You're different from other women I've met." "Ellie," he said softly, turning to look at me. "There's a sadness in your eyes, but there's a strength there, too. It's captivating." He was seeing the real me. The confusion, the loneliness of Ethan, was bleeding through the performance of Ellie, and he was interpreting it as depth. He was falling for a person who didn't even exist. He leaned in, his gaze dropping to my lips. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. This was the moment I had been fantasizing about and dreading in equal measure. He was going to kiss me. He was going to kiss Ellie, and I wanted him to. God, I wanted him to. But as he got closer, his eyes scanned my face, and a tiny frown creased his brow. His gaze fixed on a spot just beside my ear, near my hairline. "What's that?" he murmured, reaching out a hand. Before I could react, his thumb brushed against my temple. He had felt it. The fine, almost invisible edge of the lace front of the wig. His hand recoiled, as if he'd been burned. The romantic spell was shattered. Confusion, then dawning suspicion, flooded his face. He looked at me, really looked at me. His eyes now sharp and analytical. He looked at the perfect, yet somehow unnatural line of my hair. He looked at the subtle contours on my face that were maybe a little too perfect. He looked at my hands, which, despite the manicure, were still fundamentally a man's hands. "Ellie," he said, his voice a strained whisper. The way he said my name was different now. It was a question. Who are you? Really?" The moment I had feared since the very beginning was here. The illusion was cracking. The man who saw me as beautiful and captivating was now looking at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve, a lie he couldn't decipher. I wanted to tell him the truth. Ethan screamed inside my head, desperate to confess, to explain this insane situation. But Ellie couldn't. Ellie was the one he had been talking to. Ellie was the one he was attracted to. If I told him the truth, Ellie would die, right here on this park bench, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. So I did the only thing I could. I panicked. "I have to go," I stammered, standing up abruptly. My voice was a choked, pathetic version of Ellie's. "Wait," he said, standing up too. "Just talk to me. What's going on?" I couldn't. I turned and fled, my heels sinking into the soft grass, making me stumble. I ran, not looking back, the sound of him calling my name fading behind me. I didn't stop until I was back in the sterile safety of the facility. I slammed the door to my apartment and leaned against it, my body trembling uncontrollably. It was over. The beautiful, fragile fantasy I had built around Callum was shattered. He knew something was wrong. He had seen the seams in the costume. I stumbled to the mirror and stared at my reflection. Ellie's beautiful face was streaked with tears. I didn't remember crying. Her eyes were wide with panic and heartbreak. Her red lipstick was slightly smeared. She was a mess. I was a mess. The internal dam finally broke. The pressure of living two lives, of holding together two contradictory identities, became too much. A wave of pure, agonizing psychic pain washed over me. Who was I? Was I Ethan? The man who was so pathetic he had to hide inside a female persona to feel alive? Or was I Ellie, the woman whose entire existence was a lie, a construct of wigs and makeup? Both sides of myself were at war, tearing me apart from the inside. Ethan wanted to go back to his simple, logical life, to the comfort of anonymity. He wanted to erase the last few weeks, to forget the feel of stockings and the weight of a wig. He was screaming in terror at what he had become. But Ellie was screaming too. She was the freedom, the beauty, the emotion I had never allowed myself. She was the one who could connect with people, who could be found captivating by a man like Callum. She didn't want to die. She didn't want to be locked away in a box when the mission was over. She was terrified of being smothered by Ethan's drab, grey existence. The conflict was unbearable. With a choked sob, I reached up and grabbed the wig, tearing it from my head and throwing it across the room. The long dark hair lay in a heap on the floor, like a dead thing. Then my hands went to my face, clawing at the makeup, scrubbing at my eyes. Black mascara streamed down my cheeks, mingling with my tears. I scraped the lipstick from my mouth with the back of my hand. I looked in the mirror again. The face that stared back was a grotesque parody. A man's face, raw and red, with the perfect arch of a woman's eyebrows, stained with the black tears of a character he could no longer control. It was the face of my own breakdown. I sank to the floor, my body racked with sobs. I was neither of them. I was nothing. A hollow shell that had been filled with a beautiful lie. And now that the lie was broken, there was nothing left inside. I cried for Ethan, for the simple life he had lost. I cried for Ellie, for the real, vibrant person she could never be. And I cried for the shattered, nameless thing that was left behind, kneeling on a cold bathroom floor. The next morning, I couldn't get out of bed. The breakdown had left me scoured out. An empty vessel, a knock on the door eventually roused me. It was Lena. She took one look at my tear-stained face and the wig lying on the floor and sighed. "It's over," she said, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. "Thorne and his associates were arrested this morning. The data you planted led us right to them. The mission is done." The words should have been a relief. Freedom. It was what I had been working towards. But all I felt was a vast, terrifying emptiness. The mission was over, which meant Ellie was over. "You did good work," Lena continued, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Exceptionally good. Now, we need to figure out what to do with you." I just stared at her, mute. "I can make this all go away," she said. "We can put you through a debriefing, transition you back. Your job will be waiting." The money will be in your account. You can go back to being Ethan Ward, and this will all just be a strange, classified chapter of your life. Go back. The words echoed in the silent room. Go back to being the person I was before. But that person didn't exist anymore. He had been shaved, plucked, and scrubbed out of existence. I can't, I whispered, the words tearing at my raw throat. You can't what? I can't go back, I said, a little stronger this time. But I can't be her, either. She's not real. Lena looked at me, her expression unreadable. No, she's not. She was a construct, a tool for a job. But the feelings you had as her, the confidence, the fear, the connection, that was all you. That wasn't part of the costume. Ethan! Her words hit me with the quiet force of truth. Ellie had been the vehicle, but I had been the driver. Her beauty had opened doors. But my intelligence, my fear, my desperate need to connect, that had been me, channeled through her. So what do? I asked, my voice cracking. I'm not him anymore. And I can't be her. I'm stuck in the middle. Maybe, Lena said, standing up. The middle isn't a bad place to be. Maybe you don't have to choose. You're not Ethan or Ellie. You're just you. And you get to decide what that means now. She left me alone with that thought. You get to decide. For weeks, I had been following orders, playing a part written by someone else. The idea of choosing for myself was terrifying. I spent the next 2 days in that apartment. In a fog. I didn't get dressed. I barely ate. I thought about Ethan's quiet stability and his crippling invisibility. I thought about Ellie's intoxicating beauty and her fundamental dishonesty. Both were extremes. Both were incomplete. On the 3rd day, I finally got up. I showered. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't shave my legs or my arms. The feeling of the stubble returning was strange, but not unwelcome. It felt real. I went to the closet. I pushed past Ellie's beautiful dresses and skirts. In the very back was the simple pair of jeans and the polo shirt I had worn on my very first day. My old skin. I put them on. They felt foreign, the rough denim stiff and unfamiliar against my soft skin. Then I looked at the vanity, at the makeup and the wig. I thought I would feel revulsion, that I would want to throw it all away. But I didn't. I picked up the wig, its hair soft and sleek in my hands. I remembered the confidence it gave me. I opened a tube of lip gloss and remembered the way Callum had looked at my lips. These weren't just tools of a lie. They were tools of expression. They had unlocked parts of me I never knew existed. The softness, the vulnerability, the emotional awareness. That was all real. Ellie had been the key, but she wasn't the door itself. An idea began to form, a tentative, fragile thought. Lena was right. I didn't have to choose. I didn't have to be Ethan, the repressed IT guy. And I didn't have to be Ellie, the female impersonator. I could just be me. A version of me that included both. A person who understood logic and code, but who also understood the power of a well-chosen dress and the confidence that came with feeling beautiful. I walked out of that apartment, dressed as Ethan but with Ellie's arched eyebrows, and found Lena. I'm ready, I said. Ready to go back, she asked. No, I said, and for the first time in a long time. My voice felt like my own, not Ethan's low mumble, not Ellie's soft melody, but something in between, clearer, stronger. I'm ready to go forward. Life after the mission was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. It wasn't the quiet of invisibility anymore. It was the quiet of peace. I went back to my old apartment, to my cat, Pixel, and to my job, as promised. My record was clean, and a significant sum of money was in my bank account. David and Brenda treated me with a new, slightly fearful respect. and no one ever mentioned the photo again. On the surface, everything was the same, but underneath, everything had changed. I had changed. I didn't throw away Ellie's things. Lena had let me keep a few key items: a simple, soft jersey dress, a high-quality makeup kit, and one of the wigs, the most natural-looking one. They sat in a box in the back of my closet, a silent testament to the strangest journey of my life. For months, I didn't touch them. I was focused on finding my new center, on integrating the lessons I had learned. I found myself more confident at work, more willing to speak up in meetings. I was more emotionally attuned to my friends. It was like Ellie had cracked open a window in the stuffy room of my personality, and now fresh air was finally circulating. One Saturday night, I was home alone, feeling a familiar pang of loneliness, the kind of loneliness that used to send me spiraling into a night of video games and junk food. But this time, something felt different. I found myself walking to the closet and pulling out the box. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the lid. There was the wig, resting on its stand. There was the makeup. I wasn't on a mission. I wasn't trying to be someone else. I was just curious. I wanted to see her again. Slowly, deliberately, I began the ritual. It was different this time. I wasn't trying to erase Ethan. I was trying to find a balance. I didn't put on the heavy foundation or the contour. I just used a little concealer, a touch of mascara, a hint of blush, just enough to soften the edges. Then, I took the wig and settled it on my head, the long hair falling around my shoulders. The feeling was no longer alien. It was comforting. Finally, I slipped on the soft jersey dress. It wasn't a costume. It was just a piece of comfortable clothing. I turned to the full-length mirror, my heart beating a steady, calm rhythm. I had half expected to see Ellie, the separate entity, staring back. I had half expected to feel that old, disorienting vertigo. But I didn't. The person in the mirror was neither Ethan nor Ellie. It was a beautiful, seamless blend of both. I could see the familiar structure of my own face, but softened. I could see my eyes, but they were deeper, more expressive. I saw the strength of a man and the grace of a woman, not at war with each other, but in perfect, harmonious balance. The person in the mirror looked whole, complete. A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't Ethan's awkward, rare smile. It wasn't Ellie's practiced, gentle smile. It was mine, a genuine, joyful, accepting smile. I wasn't a man pretending to be a woman. I wasn't a woman trapped in a man's body. I was just a person who contained multitudes. I was strong and I was soft. I was logical and I was emotional. I was him and I was her. And in that quiet moment, standing in my bedroom, dressed in a simple dress with long hair cascading over my shoulders, I finally understood. My face had become hers. Yes, but in the process, her heart had become mine, and together, we had finally become me. Finally, I whispered to the person in the mirror, "This is me."